welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about rhythm guitar and how to improve your rhythm guitar playing. It's a topic that doesn't really get enough attention, and I'll admit that most of the teaching, or at least the live videos that I do on YouTube or Facebook or wherever, tends to be lead guitar playing stuff. That's what most people request. However, rhythm guitar, as I think you all know, is what we end up playing like 95% of the time when we're playing songs or writing songs or whatever. So I thought we should spend some time talking about rhythm guitar today, and I brought in a special guest here, someone I've known for a long time, someone I have actually toured with, and that is Mark Turko. Welcome, Mark.
All right. Tom S., how you doing tonight?
Doing very good. Doing very good. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so Mark, let me introduce. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'll introduce your Mark. Mark Turko, and Mark is a guy known for a long time. Really excellent guitar player. Specializes in teaching rhythm guitar. Of course, he plays the guitar too, and plays in working bands, and has played lots of gigs. And as I mentioned, we've toured together before. So this is Mark. Mark, you've taught a lot of people. You've got a lot of students at your music school. One thing I forgot to mention is that you own a music school that you founded and you run. And in all those lessons you've taught over all the years, and you've taught a ton of guitar players to become better players, what are the things that you think, in your experience as a teacher, or maybe even yourself in the past when you were getting your playing together years ago, what are some of the things that hold guitar players back from developing really great rhythm guitar playing?
Excellent questions. Well, I will draw off my own personal experience, and actually that's what I teach to my students. The first thing is actually what I call precision timing. It's really playing in time, not just approximately. Most people think that playing in time, or that they are playing in time, but they're really not. If you put it under a microscope, they're close, but not quite there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is working on the isolation of your rhythm mechanics and your efficiency. So knowing it inside and out, not just being able to get through it. It's really an in-depth knowing really just what your rhythm hand is supposed to do. And then the third thing is rhythm integration. So that's being able to execute what you've practiced in isolation if you did point number 2, but now you got to do it with both hands. Those are the three big things that I find holds people back from really taking to the next level.
All right. So let's talk about each one separately, if you don't mind. So let's talk about the first thing that you mentioned. What do you think is what's behind this? What is the cause? What's causing this issue? How do people get stuck on this? And then how do they get unstuck on this? But really, what's behind it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is not listening to yourself while you're playing, and also listening to what you're playing with. So you need to be listening to it an ensemble or a backing track or whatever. Most people just go on autopilot, and it's kind of there in the background. They know that they're playing in time, but they're truly not listening to two things simultaneously. And it's hard to focus on to listen to two things simultaneously and do something, but it's something that you're totally capable of doing. It just takes practice, just like everything else. So when you're able to listen to two things at the same time, you can really pay attention to the details. All right. Most people just kind of rush through learning some kind of rhythm, and they don't spend the time to really be able to see how it sits inside of whatever music is being played around them. So that's the root cause for precision timing, basically.
All right. And then why are they stuck on this? What is why can't they get out of it, or why is it hard to solve on your own? I mean, you can solve it on your own, but it tends to be hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, it tends to be hard because they don't understand how much time they have to put into it. That's all. So if you think you got it, do some more. And then if you think you got it, do some more. And then if you think you got it, do some more. Listen harder. You know what I mean? That's really all that it is. I mean, and it's no fault of their own. They think, I got it. This is great. I got it. But you really, truly don't have it. And that's the thing. And the deeper you go, the more you realize how much you didn't have it when you thought you had it. That's all that it really is. You just need to spend a little bit more time with it. And the good news is that once you got it, you cross that invisible line in the sand, moving forward, everything else is going to be easier and faster. And you're going to realize how far you have to take it. And it's not this stop and start. You could just continuously go until you really got it down good.
Yeah, I'm laughing over here to myself because you described me as, years ago as a teenager, and then even in my early 20s and stuff. I thought, I got it. I can play the song. I know the rhythm parts. I play in a band. I got it, and I didn't have it, but I didn't know that I didn't have it. And I was taking guitar lessons at the time, and the teacher, or actually, I had multiple teachers in those years, but the teachers would tell me, "You don't got it." And exactly what you're saying, almost word for word. No, dude, you don't got it. And what are you talking about? I don't have it. I'm playing the song. You play the song. I play the song. We're playing the same thing. I got it. No, I didn't have it. So it's really funny because I was definitely one of those who didn't get it. And then something else I want to draw on, something you mentioned, is that, you said once you do get it, and you really got it, then that makes everything else easier. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that does sort of two things. First, it helps you immensely with your lead playing in ways that I wouldn't have anticipated back then when I was starting out. And even after I was starting out, I've been playing for, 5-8 years or whatever. And even then, my rhythm playing wasn't really tight yet. But once it got better, so did my lead playing, so did my phrasing. That's one way it helped me. And then the other thing is that once I finally got it, I realized many other people don't got it that I thought had it. I remember in high school, some of my friends were listening to the Slayer album, the Rain of Blood, South of Heaven, those albums. I was more of a Metallica fan at the time. But I remember being back in high school thinking, man, that is really, really played well. I mean, whether you like the style or not, I'm not talking about the solos now, I'm just talking about the rhythm. And I thought this, they were a really cool rhythmic, band rhythmically. And now, you listen to it, later on and you realize, man, that's not tight at all. I mean, they didn't have it, to their credit. I mean, they didn't have, computers. You couldn't quantize things. That was, you just went in there on a low budget, you banged it out, and that's it. So, I mean, considering those conditions and the standard at the time, the album's still pretty good. It's nice to listen to if you like the style. But I mean, by today's standards, it sounds really not tight because everyone is, in the computer editing, and the standard has simply increased, since those times in rock and metal and stuff. But that was a kind of an eye-opening for me. It's like, I've listened to these songs for years and years and hear them in a different way. Okay, so let's get to the second thing that you mentioned. You listed 3 things. Let's talk about the second one. If you can go deeper into that, what's behind this?
All right. So the second thing that I had said was the isolation of your rhythm mechanics and efficiency. So, again, it goes back to when you think you got it, you actually don't have it. But in this case, you're actually not even going to worry about using your fretting hand at all. What you really want to do is break it down into the smallest possible components as you can to really understand, and slow is as slow as you need to go. So, if you can talk your way through it with words, then you're not playing it too fast. I mean, if that's as slow as you need to go to really, really know. I mean, a lot of students will take some type of rhythm, and sometimes they'll do an upstroke and sometimes they'll do a downstroke in the same spot on a particular beat or on an and they need to be consistent with it. And so they really need to sit down and say, okay, what am I really doing here? Especially if it's a repeating pattern, what am I really doing here every single time I'm supposed to do it? And again, the attention to detail, it's going to seem like you're going backwards because you could do it, right? But you really can't, not consistently and exactly the same way every time. So knowing that in such great detail, even if it took you a long time to break it down, once you got not too much longer into it, not even, let's say if you can do it at half speed, it's almost like you could just do it at full speed. But it feels like you're going backwards because you're relearning. It's an illusion, like you're relearning something you already know, but you really never knew it in the first place.
Gotcha. One thing that you mentioned about talking through it with words, I think I understand what you mean, but I'm not sure it's clear for everyone who's listening. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is if you could say to yourself while you're doing whatever pattern you're doing, this is a downstroke, then I'm going to hit an upstroke. And while you're saying this stuff, you're actually executing it with your right hand. You're not even going to be using your left hand. You're just banging away on open strings. You're only focused on your right hand only. And it's, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, down. And if your right hand can't keep up with your mouth, that means you need to slow down.
Got it.
If you could say it, you could play it.
Yeah, cool. Let's see here. Let's talk about the third thing you mentioned. Of the three, let's go to the number 3. And what is the root cause of that? What's behind it? Why are people stuck on it?
Okay, so the third thing that I had mentioned was the rhythm integration. That's getting what you just practiced in isolation, using efficient motions, combining it with using your left hand. The root cause is that most people actually don't practice this way. They won't work on their right hand all by itself, and then they won't slow it down and try to integrate their left hand. Now, most people are so concerned about the way that it sounds overall. And it's like, oh, my fretting hand is making mistakes. And so they're stopping and start. Don't worry about it. You're just trying to do it, but you're still focusing on what you're supposed to be doing correctly with your right hand. Then eventually, once your right hand is good, then you can start changing the focus between your rhythm hand and your fretting hand. Okay, so if your fretting hand is getting the attention, if you make a mistake with your rhythm hand, don't worry about it. Focus your attention back to your rhythm hand. Make sure that's perfect. Don't worry about if your fretting hand is a little sloppy. And eventually the two will actually come together and snap into place, but it won't just snap into place right away.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. All right, so now you've identified the reasons why people sometimes struggle to develop their rhythm guitar skills. And then we've explored some of the reasons behind why that occurs. Let's talk about what guitar players can do about it. How can they fix this stuff? So what advice do you have? And if you want to take it, you mentioned the 3 things. If you wanted to take it point by point, you could. If you have general advice that would cover all 3, you could answer it however you want. But how can anyone who is struggling or thinks they may be struggling, how can they fix it?
Sorry about that. I'm clicking the mute button. As far as precision timing goes, okay, so there's a way to practice to achieve precision timing, and you could first start off with a metronome, and there is such a thing as playing before, playing on, and playing after a beat. So if you can work with a metronome, the first objective is just to make the click actually disappear. So if your rhythm hand is striking the strings and your metronome's just at the right level, if they're of equal volume, the click will begin to disappear, and you'll only hear the click when you're not playing. And I learned this because we actually practiced with a click in a band that I had. I actually never did this in isolation as a guitar player first. We were preparing to go into the studio, and we realized that we were nailing it when the click disappeared. You know what I mean? So then the next step after that is realizing, well, when the click disappears, I could actually play right before it, or I could play after it. And that's going to alter the way that things feel, but I'm still playing in time. That's a little more advanced, but that's what I mean by precise timing. I mean, if that click disappears, you're on the money. And then if you want to take it further to learn to play behind or ahead, that's a whole nother process. But for right now, if you can make that click disappear, you're in really good shape.
Yeah, I totally agree on that as well. That's something I learned, as a guitar student many years ago, probably 30 or more years ago. That's what my guitar teacher at the time told me. He said, when the click disappears, you got it. Well, sometimes the click disappeared. Sometimes the click didn't disappear. But I was more interested in doing the lead stuff. So I didn't really put in the time that rhythm playing deserved for quite a long time. And in that, my guitar playing, not only the rhythm guitar playing, but the lead playing suffered because of it. I wasn't smart enough to realize that at the time, but I know it now. So, but that's exactly right. That, you want to try and get that click to disappear. And and here's one of the reasons why. One, it will feel better. I noticed that right away, that when you're playing right on the beat exactly, there's a feeling that you get that you don't get if you're off. Now you also get a different feeling if you're playing on the backbeat a little bit. You're a little bit behind the beat. I don't mean out of time. You're intent, and I know you know this, Mark. This is what Mark is referring to. You're intentionally lagging slightly behind, okay, or slightly forward with intent, not because you're all over the place and you don't know what you're doing. And that's something that, as you mentioned, is more advanced and took me a while to learn. Is when I first got my rhythm playing to be tight on the beat. I mean, no clicking happening anymore. That was great, and it feels a certain way. But then I was playing in a band. They said, "Why don't you play a little bit on the backbeat?" Backbeat? What the heck is that? What's a backbeat? I didn't know what that was. So the guy tried to show me, but I couldn't do it. Now all I could do was play on the beat, and he's playing behind the beat. And it can sometimes be cool, but it wasn't quite as tight. And I couldn't get myself there. So that took some additional practice. It is more advanced. But when I tried it, I was sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes on, sometimes totally off. That's not where you want to be. And in the bands that I toured with, we also played with backing tracks. Click tracks. Second band also with the backing track, choirs and string parts and stuff like that. But the point is that it's even more important to be really on the money. You got 5 guys, 6 guys in the band, and the click is here, and there are backing tracks, let's say backup vocals or orchestral parts or whatever's going on, and they're right on the money usually. And then if you're ahead of the beat and the bass player is behind the beat, it just sounds like mush. It doesn't sound good, because if the whole band was ahead or the whole band was on the backbeat, that would be okay. But when you're slightly one way and the bass player, the drummer slightly the other way, it gets sloppier and sloppier and sloppier, and it just sounds kind of fuzzy. And the audience doesn't feel the impact, the punch of the whole band. Instead, it's like punch with like little reverb punches, so you're hearing the bass drum, but you feel that in your chest if you're close enough to the PA, maybe the bass. So if those two guys are locked in, and then the guitar is like before or after, you lose the impact. The audience loses the impact. And you don't want them necessarily to lose that impact if that's what you're trying to get across. But on a more, let's say, non-professional level, When you're just playing with yourself or jamming with your friends or just want to play along with the backing track or your favorite songs or whatever, if your timing is ahead and behind and ahead and behind and it's all over the place, you don't get the same feeling that you get when you're playing right on. And what helped me, and maybe if you want to speak to this, Mark, you can. What helped me was to memorize what it felt like to be with the click. See, before that, I didn't know that there was a feeling that you experience a feeling. I didn't know this. I thought, well, this is somehow mathematics. Like I've got to just get used to timing when things are, if it, and just trying to measure somehow in my mind where the next beat is, where I have to play, where the next punch is, etc. And there was I was making a lot of attempts to make calculations, which are very difficult to do, instead of relying on a feeling, because until you can get that metronome to disappear, it's hard to know what feeling you're getting, because there's a feeling to be behind the beat, there's a feeling to be on the beat, and there's a different feeling to be a little rushed before the beat. But unless you can consistently do at least one of those three things, it's difficult to memorize what is it that I'm supposed to feel, and you're just trying to make calculations. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
Yes. The first thing would be to be consistent and get familiar with the feeling of being on the beat, because it is a feeling. It's very different than behind the beat and ahead of the beat. You know what I mean? It's still playing in time, but you go for that one first. Make the click disappear. You're going to realize that there is a specific feeling, and it's always easier to instantly recall a feeling than it is the 25 steps it took to get there to do it correctly. So, so the first thing, but there are three different distinct feelings. The playing behind the beat, I actually would do second of the three to try to achieve. And it actually makes you feel like you're dragging the tempo of the song slower. But especially if you're playing to a backing track or like a metronome or something, you're not changing it, but it feels like you've just changed it. And so once you can lock into that feeling, and that one's not too bad, all you have to do is kind of hunt and peck a little bit of playing just a little bit slower, and you might waver a little bit back and forth. But once you find that one specific spot and you can consistently stay there, you feel like you've just turned the tempo down or you slowed the backing track down. And it's it is a feeling. Playing ahead of the beat, would be makes it feels like you turn the tempo up, you know. But the first thing I would definitely try to lock in making that click disappear, because the other two actually are easier to achieve once you can do one. The other two are harder to achieve, but once you can make the click disappear, the other two are easier relative to that. I wouldn't try to just start trying to learn how to play behind the beat first.
Yeah,
Not only
without knowing where the beat is. Yeah.
well, that's the thing. You need to know where the beat is to play behind the beat. But something I'd like to mention too, though, when you are playing in an ensemble and you do have several people that are all capable of doing this, even if you're playing the tracks or a metronome, it doesn't matter. Those three live musicians can actually create the feeling of slowing things down. And then let's just say in one section or a bridge or something, and then you hit the chorus and everybody's on top of the beat. Boy, it feels like there's a catapult that just launches everybody forward. But by the metronome, it never changed. But you just emotionally took the listener from something that they feel like something's being held back, and then you just propel them forward like a slingshot into the next part of the song. And if you got musicians who could do that, it's incredible.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And it takes it takes a very good band to do that, because that works, the effect works best when everyone's on that together and making those changes together. So
Yeah. It
yeah.
only works if everybody's on that.
Yeah, otherwise it starts sounding wishy-washy. I was in a band that I won't mention the guitar player's name. He's quite well known, um, more well known than I am. Um, and we toured extensively together, and he was always ahead of the beat, like far ahead of the beat. And the bass player in the band was a bass player that he had played with for years in other bands, and similar. I mean, those two guys were way ahead. And by that point, I was playing I was right locking in with the drums, So the point is, when we weren't all on the same page, and we weren't in particular in the beginning of the first tour, the band didn't sound good. I mean, we were good players, and the songs were cool, and we played our parts well, generally. But because we had some people ahead, some people on the beat, we weren't in sync that way. We lost that impact. The audience lost the impact, really. So we got that straightened out towards the end of that tour. That particular tour, we had only 2 days of rehearsal. None of us had met before, with the exception of the guitar player and the bass player. So we didn't have much in terms of rehearsal time. We were already on tour. But the point is that when the band is not in a line wherever, you don't have that punch. It's just lacking. So, and as a fan of music, when I go to concerts or whatever, it's a definite different experience when the band is really locked in, no matter where they are, in reference to the tempo, than when they're not. It's just a big difference. And the more experienced one gets as a musician, the more you pick up on these things. You notice that more and more and more. And when it's done well, it feels good as a listener, and you just enjoy the band immensely more. At least that's been my experience here. Let's take some questions here, Mark. So we've got I'm looking at some YouTube questions at the moment.
We got a couple of good ones here.
What do you want to take?
I want to take, what's up top for us right now? What I'm seeing at least, Gregory Murphy. He said, my question is it better to use right hand rhythm alone opposed to using two hand synchronization?
Okay, hold on. Let me find that one. I'm not seeing that one. I see a Gray M question. We'll get to him. Gregory Murphy, when it comes to rhythm guitar. This is not the question, right?
No. But he actually, that was a good question is too. Yeah, that one right there.
All right, let's take this one. All right, Gregory. Mark likes your question. It looks pretty good to me. Want to tackle that, Mark?
The answer is both. You do both. I believe he probably asked this question if that time, maybe before we covered it, but I'll reinstate it. It is both. Right hand only was that isolated mechanics and efficiency, point number 2 that I was talking about. And actually point number 3 is the two hand synchronization that we went into, a little more depth, but the answer is both.
Very
both.
Good. Agreed totally.
It's an easy answer. It's both. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, great question. Let's take, I mentioned Gray's name. Let's take this question. Oh, sorry, that was a comment. Funny one. Where's the other one I saw? Here we go. What's a good introduction exercise to show students to add this concept to their practice routine? Now, I didn't catch, Gray, I didn't catch when you asked that question. So when you say add this concept, I'm actually not sure which concept you were referring to. If you want to quickly tell us in the chat, we can try and address that. But it sounds like Gray has his question coming from the perspective as a teacher and wanting to know how to help the students. You know what? We're not seeing a reply from Gray yet. Mark, do you want to just take any one of the concepts? We're not sure which one he
asked. As far as making the click disappear, I would just demonstrate it. You know what I mean? And if you're capable as a teacher to play behind the beat and ahead of the beat, I would demonstrate it just so they could hear what it sounds like. So it's not this abstract theory, So if it's the concept of making the click disappear, there he is.
Metronome, the metronome timing, he says. Okay, so you picked the right one.
Yeah, so I would, the most important thing if you're going to demonstrate it is that you need to make sure that the levels are just right so the click does disappear. So if you know how to do it, but the metronome is too hot and you know you're on and they don't hear the click disappear and they're going to be like, what are you talking about? You have to make sure that those two things are just at the right volume so they cancel each other out. But I would just demonstrate it. That's
Yeah,
all.
great. And great point about the matching volumes to start with, because even when you demonstrate it with matching volumes and you play it and the click disappears, etc., when your students go home, if you don't explicitly say to them what Mark just said, they may not pick up on the fact that, oh, these have to match volume wise. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So let's
Yep.
take this question here, Mark. On precise timing, is it beneficial to create backing tracks in Guitar Pro with the exact rhythm and playing to them versus strictly using a metronome?
I would say both. It depends. I mean, if you have access and you'd use Guitar Pro, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. The good thing about that is that if you have that technology available to you and you create the track, you could slow the tempo down, you could speed it up, you could put it right where you're in your comfort zone and get used to it. If you don't have Guitar Pro, strictly metronome is fine. The biggest thing is go slow, like real slow. Like start off stupid slow. And if you could just immediately start to ramp up your, beats per minute, that's fine. I mean, was it going to take 1 or 2 minutes out of your life to kind of click through a bunch of BPMs until you get to a certain spot? But if you have access to the technology, do both. If you only have a metronome, you can get to the same place just as fast.
Yes, agreed. Well, I'll add one other thing to this on top of what you just said, Mark, and that is you have to have a way to confirm if what you're playing is tight or not. So Mark mentioned get the metronome to disappear. That's a awesome, great starting point. That's a way to test if at least the beats are on. But then there's stuff in between the beats, right? You've got eighth notes or triplets or sixteenths or whatever you have. And you have to have a way to confirm whether those are also in time. So what I really like about this question that we're seeing on the screen is it asks about, playing with the metronome or playing along with Guitar Pro that you've entered the rhythm in or whatever. Playing with Guitar Pro, as Mark said, is also a good idea. What I would do one other thing, and I would record yourself playing to the tempo, but mute the Guitar Pro tracks so that all you're hearing is the metronome. Okay, you're just hearing the beat. You're playing along. You record yourself. Then you go back and you listen to that recording and compare it to the Guitar Pro track that has the full parts. That's what I would do there. So while sometimes you're not able to tell if you're completely on time with everything in between the beats when playing live until you are experienced enough that you know what it feels like to be on time and you know what it feels like to not be on time in between beats. But if you're not there quite yet, record yourself and go back and listen to a perfect track. Guitar Pro is one way to do that. So you can record the Guitar Pro track in there. You got the metronome on a separate track. So now you got two tracks. You mute the one track. You play along with the metronome. You record that. Then you go back, mute the metronome track because you don't need it at this point. Unmute the Guitar Pro track and listen to those together. Now, tip about listening. Right here, I'm in my office, so this is not my studio or anything, but I've got two. I'm going to make you smaller for a second here, Mark. I've got two speakers here on my desk. Okay. One there, one there. All right. Now I'm purposely sitting exactly in the middle of those two speakers. How do I know it's exactly? I measured it. Okay. It's exactly the same this way. It's exactly the same this way. Okay. But even then, with listening and making sure that you're in the right position, what I'm going to suggest is that you take that recording, put on headphones, put the Guitar Pro track all the way in one speaker, put your recorded track all the way in the other speaker. What you want to listen for is your brain, your ears being drawn to one speaker or the other. And here's how this is going to work. Your brain, even if you have two things at the same volume level, okay, your brain's attention is going to go to whichever event happens first every time. Okay. So if you got the Guitar Pro track here and your track is over here, if you find that your brain is going over there in terms of its attention for a particular note, that note is too early. If you find your brain shooting over there, listening what's over there for that note, you were too late. If your brain isn't bouncing back and forth or isn't focused more on one speaker or the other, you're in time. Okay. And this is one of the best ways in the studio for those of you who record either at home or in a real studio or whatever, and you're double tracking your rhythm guitar parts, right? You record a track, send it to the left speaker, you re-record the track, send it to the right speaker. Okay. When you put your headphones on, if you hear this, if your brain is being pulled, its attention is being pulled to one speaker or the other. Usually what will happen when you recorded both tracks, it'll go back. If it's out of time, it'll constantly do this. Okay. You don't want that. If you hear that, you know that at least one of those tracks is not in time. They may both be not in time, but for sure, at least one of them is not in time. Okay. So this is what a lot of, experienced engineers listen for, recording engineers. If you go and record an album with a real engineer, they typically have incredible ears. It's their job to have incredible ears. Okay. But they'll listen to a headphone, and if their brain's going like this, they know it's no good. I mean, either that track's no good or that track's no good, or they're both no good, but that's the ultimate test. So I referenced a Slayer album. I think it was the Rain and Blood album or the South of Heaven album. I don't remember. And you'll hear that your brain has no choice but to go to whatever's occurring earliest. That's how you can really tell that those tracks are not really exactly in time. And they're pretty close, especially for that era. Analog recording, no real editing capability really other than punching in and out. So this is not a criticism of that band at all. It's just an observation of the fact of reality of the time. Okay. The time period. But that's a useful way for you to really test and know, are we on time? Are we not on time? And more importantly than if you're on time or not, is in which direction are we not in time? Am I consistently too early? Am I consistently too late? Or is it all over the place? Okay. So that's, I hope that's helpful to you guys, and my description is clear enough. Anything to add to that before we go to the next question, Mark?
No, other than Metatone asked what is the best process to get precise, and you just gave it. So this question came before you went on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that pretty much sums it all out. I mean, it can't be any more precise than that. A precise process.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could say is if you don't have capabilities with Guitar Pro, a metronome and your guitar at the right volume and just your phone to record it, listen to yourself play. You can't trust that you're doing things correctly while you're doing it. You need to record yourself and listen back.
Yeah. And for those of you who have Mac computers, you have GarageBand at least included. I don't have a PC. All my stuff is Mac, so I don't know if PC users, Dell computers or whatever PC computers you guys are using, if there are native programs that come with the computers or not. The point is that you may have stuff already essentially for free if you've got a computer. If you've got a Mac computer, you're going to have GarageBand. And there's a bunch of things you can do there. And besides, Guitar Pro, that's not really that expensive, right? It's been a while since I bought it, a long time actually, but it's, as far as I recall, it's not really expensive. Let's take this question, Mark. I'm having a great time while attending this guitar talk. Well, thank you. My question is how to get better in rhythm and how to understand rhythm by ears. I tried a lot, still unable to figure it out. I think we may have touched on this a bit. Anything else we could add here, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, if you understand what the rhythm is, like I said, take it in isolation and strip it down. Don't play along to the backing track. Don't play along to your favorite song. You know, can you play your favorite song with all the rhythm parts from the beginning to the end, just with the metronome only? I think hopefully I'm answering the question. I'm not sure. Getting better with rhythm by ears, but um, I think he means you're not going to get better at rhythm guitar by just listening, by just saying, oh gee, that sounds cool, let me try that. No, I think you have to be a little more scientific. You need to break it down. YouTube has actually a wonderful feature where you could slow the speed down, so if something's going by too fast, you can actually slow a rhythm down. It gets a little distorted, but yet you could still get a better understanding of what's going on. I think it's analyzing, dissecting, knowing what you're going to play, do it slowly, and then you could bring yourself back up to speed. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm not quite sure what he means by
yeah. No, I think that was good. I mean, even if that was not precisely what he was looking for, the answer was still good. Anyway, let's take a look at this question. Alessandro asks, can you indicate 3 or 5 guitarists or groups to listen to as a reference? I think what Alessandro is asking is bands that are play tight, perhaps. I'm going to assume that's what's meant here. I'll mention well, first of all, in the hard rock, heavy metal world, there's 2 bands that I can mention that come to the top of my mind immediately. One is Dream Theater, no surprise there. Symphony X is another one, no surprise there really either, that those 2 bands come up to, the top of my list of bands that are really tight. And not only are they really tight on the albums, they're really tight live, at least when I've seen them. And I've seen both of those bands multiple times live. Very, 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 very tight. Where someone, let's say a band like Alice in Chains, which is a band that I like, not as tight. And I mean, nowhere near as tight. It's not really that, it's not the same style, of course, but a band like Green Day, I'm not a Green Day fan at all, but I respect the fact that Green Day is a pretty tight band. And it's pretty tight stuff. And the parts are simple relative to the other bands that we were just talking about, but it's tight. If you have any see any videos of, let's say, Nirvana playing tight, I mean, Ivana playing live, it's you're not likely going to find a lot of tight stuff happening there. So, I mean, you can come to your own conclusions, whether that's good or bad. I'm not going to make a judgment here on the YouTubes. But the point is, if you're looking for a band to listen to that's an example of really tight playing, Nirvana is probably not your example. Green Day could be, Symphony X, Dream Theater, definitely, if that's what you're into stylistically. Any other thoughts here?
I agree with you 100%. The only thing that I would add is if you're not into rock and metal and you're more of a blues guy, listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan. Truly, truly fantastic rhythm guitar player. Truly, truly.
Exactly. Okay, let's take a look at this question here. Let's take a look at this one. Could you explain the importance of playing slow for the mind to pick up on rhythm faster? You want to take first shot at this, Mark?
Well, we actually both agree on this and we both think the same way, but I actually think you're better at explaining it than me. The only thing that I could say is you need time to think. in order to learn. So I mean, that's the summary of it, but I'm sure you have a much better in-depth explanation to get to that summary.
Yeah, well, the question is about the importance. So let's focus on that word, the importance of playing slow. The goal ultimately is for you as a player to be able to play tightly. And by the way, we've been talking about playing tight, but I know Mark doesn't mean to imply that rhythm guitar playing is only about timing. There's a lot more that goes into rhythm guitar playing besides just playing tight or playing in time. There's tons and tons more that we haven't even touched on yet. Okay. And we probably won't today, but we will in the future when I have Mark back. But the point is that since we're today focusing on timing, the importance is that you want to be able to memorize what it feels like to play dead on with the beat, or to play a little back, play on the backbeat, or a little ahead. It's a feeling that you want to memorize. Okay. The trick, or the challenging part, is memorizing it, because in order to memorize it, you have to know what it is in the first place. Okay. And you have to be able to identify when you're not playing in time. Okay. Now, we talked earlier today about how to identify if a recording that you made was not in time. Remember, we talked about the Guitar Pro track, the metronome. You record along, with the metronome, and then you go back and compare the timing of your recorded track to the timing of the Guitar Pro track. Okay. So we've already talked about that. Now, that is a useful process, but that process only tells you what actually happened after the fact, after you've played and recorded it. Okay. You can learn from that, because what you want to do is you want to look for patterns. Am I often behind the beat? Am I often late? Or am I often rushing forward? Or is it all over the place? We hope, okay, if you're taking lessons from me, I hope that you're either always late or always rushing. Because if you're not always late or always rushing, and you're not on time either, and it's all over the place, my job just got infinitely harder. Okay. My job is much harder if you're all over the place. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to look for, if I was your teacher, is I would be looking for patterns. Once I see a pattern, fixing it's pretty easy. If there's no pattern, now fixing it is much harder. We still can fix it, but now it's much more work. It will take much more time, and there are different things we have to do to approach that. Okay. Now I'm going to get to the heart. That was all just background. Now I'm going to get to the heart of the question. When you're not playing in front of Mark or myself or whoever you take lessons from, if you take lessons from someone, if you're not playing in front of someone who can give you the immediate feedback as you're playing and saying, okay, you're rushing, you're a little late, you're rushing, you're a little late. If you don't have that, and it's just you all by yourself, you need to be able to identify in real time while you're playing, oh, that last beat, I was a little bit ahead, or 2 beats ago, I was falling a little bit behind. That's much harder to do. Now, it can be done. You can do it, Gregory, and all of you can do it. But in order to do that, you've got to play really slow, because your brain needs time in between the beats to perceive what just happened. Was I ahead of the beat? Was I behind the beat? Or was I dead on? So you need to perceive that. Okay. Then you need to make decisions about what you're going to do about it. So if you were dead on the beat, and assuming that's the goal here, there's no action step to make other than play the next note or the next beat in time, right? There's no further action step. But if you were, let's say, rushing the previous beat, you were ahead of the beat. Now you've got to perceive that, recognize it. Now you've got to make a decision in real time what you're going to do to adjust for the next beat. So if you were rushing, you would want to say to yourself internally, and you don't have much time to say this, so it's going to go by pretty quick, which is why you got to play slow so you get yourself more time. You want to say to yourself or remind yourself, lean back. And it actually can physically help you if you're sitting to actually lean back in the chair for the next beat or the next measure or the next, 3 measures or whatever. When your body leans back, you tend to relax. And if you add to that exhaling, so when that downbeat's coming, you exhale before that downbeat is going to occur. So you are as relaxed as you can be. Your breath is relaxed. If you're holding your breath and breathing in, that creates tension and holds it in. If you're already exhaling, you are releasing tension in yourself, okay, mentally, physically, and you lean back, you are much more likely to solve the problem of you rushing forward if you lean back. If you have the opposite problem and you're recognizing there's a pattern of you're always behind the beat more so than you want to be, and you're right now we're assuming you're trying to play exactly on the beat to make the metronome disappear, as Mark talked about, then you want to start leaning forward. Okay, your physiology impacts or can impact how you play because it starts impacting how you feel as you play. Okay, so the importance of playing slow is that you have a lot of time to hear what's going on, analyze it, make decisions about how you're going to adjust going forward. If any adjustment is needed, maybe none is needed, and then go and play the next note. Do what you have to do to try to correct it. Okay. The faster the tempo is, or the more notes you're playing, the harder and harder and harder it is to do all of those steps. Listen, perceive, analyze, make a decision about what you're going to do, and then go execute. That's at least 5 steps. I think it's 5 that you have to do in a very short period of time. Playing faster makes it harder. Playing slower makes it easier. Easy sounds good to me. All right. Let's see here.
Can I jump in just real quick?
Yeah, anytime.
So, I don't know what the phobia is about playing slow when you're supposed to play it fast once you know how to do it. I don't know what the phobia is, but once I just got over that a long time ago and just took the extra time to really learn it slow, it literally is like a snap of the fingers and you're just right up the tempo. There's no more practicing fast. You don't have to practice it fast anymore. You already just know how to do it, so you can just play it fast the majority of the time. Sometimes, it doesn't always work out like that. But the majority of the time is if I take the time and really, really, really learn it slowly and perfectly, it's almost a snap of the fingers to be right up the tempo. It's so much easier. It doesn't seem like you're saving time, but you actually do. I don't have to practice anything up to speed once I already know how to do it. I just do it at whatever tempo I need to do it at.
Exactly. Good stuff there. Let's see. Maybe we got one more here. Just reading through the comments. Okay, this is not exactly what we're talking about, but let's take this question. It's interesting. Thanks for your answers. If you leave space between metronome clicks, do you think you can express rhythm better? About feeling it. I'm not sure if this is a quasi songwriting question about when he refers to expressing rhythm better, or if this is about a development. Alessandro, if you want to clarify in the chat, that'd be great. To where does your question come from? Or maybe he's asking, if you leave space between the metronome clicks, do you think you can express rhythm better? Meaning if you play less notes, maybe playing half notes instead of playing quarter notes. Maybe that's what he meant. I'm not totally sure here. I'm not seeing a reply yet from Alessandro if he's still with us. I think from the songwriting perspective, I'll let you answer the other perspective, Mark. But from the songwriting perspective, expressing yourself rhythmically doesn't necessarily get easier when you play slower. in terms of the expression may not be better just because it's slower, but you may have a sense of more control over that expression. So let me give you an example. If I play a chord, let's say a power chord, and the tempo is fast and the chord's moving around and there's a lot of stuff and chugging on it, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's less time to phrase that chord. Okay, let me pick up my guitar. I got it right here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to play a chord, and I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it in a way. This might be loud. Let me mute myself so I don't hurt you guys' ears. One moment. All right, so if I play this chord, and it goes by kind of fast. Okay, that's just a sloppy D5 power chord, right? There's a lot of activity happening, right? Okay, but if I do this, now I have options. I can apply vibrato to the whole chord. So in terms of expressing in that sense, yeah, if you slow down, you have more time to do things with the chord. Mark, did you want to answer this maybe from the perspective of working on the timing or practicing the timing?
Yeah, actually, Alessandro just chimed in with clarification. So his follow-up was using a metronome with less beats, meaning muting some clicks. I'm assuming like whether it be, just halftime or something like that. Would it be more expressive? No, not necessarily. Not for practicing purposes. If you start with your click at whatever tempo it's at, or even double time to get it down, and then slowly cut it in half, it'll sound better the less clicks you have if you're nailing it. That's for sure. So I think that's what he's alluding to. So I mean, I would first start with at least quarter note beats, you know what I mean? And then if you want to cut it in half, once you got a hang of it, it'll sound better to your ears if you're nailing it.
Yeah, let me add something else. And I don't think this is what Alessandro is asking, but it relates to how he phrased this. So if you're practicing or playing or writing music with the metronome, and let's say the metronome is beating every other beat. So you have the metronome set to beat on half notes instead of quarter notes. The tempo didn't really change. You're just hearing the metronome in half time. It's only playing on half notes. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no beat in between. It just means you've set the metronome at half speed, so it clicks at half speed. That you could play everything, you could slow everything down by half speed. But I think what he's referring to is leaving the tempo the same. Let's say it was 120 beats per minute, leaving the tempo at 120, but you're adjusting the metronome down to 60. So it is sounding on the half notes. And I think he's asking, would that help you in some way? I don't know if it would help you with the timing. It may actually hurt the timing a little bit. If you're practicing, if you're trying to get it tight and you don't have it tight yet, that probably won't help. But what it would help with, and what it does help with, is how you're feeling the phrases. Okay. So I'll give you an example. If there are any Judas Priest fans here, I took my son to see Judas Priest in Sabaton, I don't know, a couple months ago or so. And if you notice the Judas Priest bass player, he's always moving on stage very differently than everybody else. He kind of does this kind of a thing. When I first saw this, now I've seen Judas Priest many times in years past, but when you first see him kind of playing like this, and the tempo is much faster than that. Okay. It looks kind of goofy at first. It's like, who is the guy in the back on the left side of the drummer doing this when everyone else is moving around, banging their head, and they seem to be playing a different song? Well, what's happening is the bass player there, he is feeling the tempo in half time. he's playing up to speed. He's playing with the band. He's not playing half notes when they're playing quarter notes. He's not playing eighths when they're playing 16. He's not doing that. What's happening is he is internalizing that the beat is that everything is cut down in half. Okay. And what that does when it makes it makes you feel different when you play. You feel the phrases in longer sections. And it helps you to relax. So someone asked here, I scanned it, about how do you play? I can't find it now, but how do you play on the backbeat? Okay. Well, there are different ways you can do that, but one of the ways you can get yourself to relax, I mentioned earlier, you just lean back in your chair. That's one way. Another way is if you can perceive everything in half time while you're playing, in full time, but you're perceiving the beat as being twice as slow. You're still playing full speed here. Okay. You're not playing twice as slow, but you're internalizing where the beat is on 1 and 3, not 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. That's a different feeling when you're playing. It's also a different feeling when you're writing music, by the way. And it helps people to calm down who are used to rushing the beat. This also helps with lead guitar playing. This is something that I talk to my students about. If they are very nervous about performing on stage or even for their friends or whatever, because they've got to play something difficult or it's fast or it's hard, and they have a hard time keeping up with it at tempo, one of the pieces of advice I'll give them is, in addition to exhale before you play the fast lick, exhale, okay? Not as you start, but before. You should already be breathing out before you start ripping that lick. All right, long exhale. And then feel the tempo in half time. You're still going to play it up to speed, but you're not feeling the tempo is this, okay? It's slowed down in half, and you will tend to relax more. And the more you relax, the easier it is to play challenging guitar parts. That's just true generally. So, Mark, I want to thank you for hanging out here and sharing all of your wonderful insights here. You had a lot of great advice for people as well. Thank you for that. I want to thank everyone who asked questions. There's a lot of really good questions. This is probably one of the best ones that I think we've had in terms of quality of questions and questions staying on topic. They're really, really good. So I want to congratulate you guys and thank you for that. One other thing I want to mention to you is I have a free resource for you guys. You can check this out. It is free. There's nothing to buy here. Okay. It's essentially a rhythm guitar playing test. Okay. It's a written test. It will help you to evaluate quickly where you might need work with your rhythm guitar playing. And then when you submit the test, it may tell you, give you some ideas of, what you can do about it. And there are some examples that you can listen to and hear as well to help you to answer those questions and determine, where is your rhythm guitar playing really at? Is it really great? That's awesome. Is it good, but, could be better in certain circumstances? Is it just, needing some work? You're still trying to get it together, or does it really need a lot of work? And that's okay too. We're just trying to, get it together. So I think that might help you guys. So if you go to my website, toms.net/rhythm guitar playing test, it's totally free there. And you guys can check that out. And I hope that's helpful. All right. Very good. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you being here. We can't see your face yet. There we go. Now we see your face. Thank you, everybody, for the awesome questions. Take care. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Bye.